We welcome back to the show a good friend of ours, Michael Jankins, is here, and we're talking something that you're going to want to pay attention to what he's talking about, because if you owe a bunch on your car, there is a plan, a program that's available that he's going to talk about. That, to me, I read it 3 times, Michael, and I'm still going, really? Why don't you explain what we're talking about?
Okay, if you're filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, we can refinance some people's vehicles in that bankruptcy, so that when you do it, you're only going to refinance your vehicle for the value of your vehicle, not the loan that you owe. So
let's give an example here. Okay.
Well, when many people have a car, they trade one in, and there's a loan on that car. So they may have something called negative equity. In other words, they're owing way too much on their car. And so when the dealer takes it in trade, they'll give you a trade-in value on it, but it may not be the full balance of the loan. So they have to carry part of that loan onto the new loan you're getting for your new car, or your new used car. And so now you've added extra debt to a car that you really shouldn't have probably done. So now if you're in a situation where you come to see me to file for bankruptcy, you're sitting on this car that maybe you owe $20,000 on, and maybe it's only worth $12,000. Well, ordinarily, I would just tell a person, give up that car, it's not worth keeping, except in Chapter 7 bankruptcy proceedings, we have a procedure. It's called redemption's the legal term, and it's an actual legal process that we have to file in the bankruptcy. And it allows a person then to refinance their car, basically, and pay off just the amount of the value. So we're saying $12,000. So I'm doing one right now pending involving Bank of the West that is similar to this hypothetical. My client owes $18,000 on I think it's a 2013 Chevy Cruze, and it's worth about 10. So we have recently filed a proceeding in the bankruptcy court against Bank of the West, and saying we want to pay you 10, and you release the title. Now, we have to do this through another lender. So there's an outfit in Cincinnati called 722 Redemption Financing. The 722 is actually the provision of the bankruptcy code, or the number of the code that allows this. So that's how they came up with their name. Yep. And they have a couple banks that they work with to do these loans. So we have to file, like, it's not a lawsuit, but it's a legal proceeding against the Ally or Ford Motor Credit or Wells Fargo. And they have a chance to fight. I mean, they may not like what we're doing. I mean, frankly, they don't like what we're doing because they're going to lose a bunch of money. Right. So the only thing they can really challenge is our idea of value may be different than theirs. I used to do this and try to be really aggressive, so I would try to really come in with a low value, but that always invited a big fight. And I really don't want to get into a big fight over these, because we don't want to expend too much in attorney fees. Otherwise, we start to diminish what the value of what my client's going to get if we start spending away their benefit. Right. So we usually are using, we look at the NADA guides, National Automobile Dealers Association. They're online. Everybody's heard of NADA, or most people. Kelly Blue Book, I think a lot of people are familiar with them. And there's Edmunds. And so we'll try to take the trade-in value is what we'll start with, because I think most of car lenders are recognizing that when the car, if it gets repossessed, if they just take it back and they're not going to keep the car, all they're going to do is sell it at a dealer's auction. Right. And they're not going to even get the trade-in value there. So they come out better by the way we're doing it than if they get the vehicle back. At least lately, we're seeing less resistance to the values that we're putting on. Some of the not dealers, but the banks, they're still pushing hard. So usually the highest value will pay us some amount where we're averaging the retail and the trade-in value, which is kind of wholesale, and more, hopefully a little bit more towards the wholesale value. And so the person that's getting this is going to get a really good deal, because they're shaving off thousands of dollars on the loan.
Yeah, in this case, your case in particular, about $8,000.
Right. Now, there is a downside. The interest rate isn't good. Some of our clients have loans with pretty good interest rates. I mean, 2-3%. Right. So those are good rates, and the rates they're going to get with this is going to probably be somewhere around 19.99. But so if you're paying 19.9 on $10,000 instead of 2% on 18 or 20,000, you know, you're still going to be coming out way ahead. And a lot of times, after you have paid for about a year, maybe a year and a half, your credit's going to be built up pretty well by that point. And then you can go to one of the local credit unions and go refinance and maybe get your loan rate down to maybe like 6%, or, you know, even if it's 8%.
Something more reasonable.
And the term of your loan's going to probably go down, because a lot of these loans that we have, they're in the early part of a 72-month loan, 6 years. So they're just swimming in debt on these vehicles. When we do the loans through 722, the duration of the loan is usually going to be 4 years. So they've chopped off a whole bunch of time, so even if you did pay the whole way, you're paying way less interest even at the higher percent.
Right.
But I think most people refinance, and it turns out real well for them. Now, it's just not for everybody, because even when we go through 722, they've got lending standards too. And so they're very careful about who they're giving loans to. People have to qualify. So they make sure that, of course, the person has to have a full-time job. They want to make sure how long the person's been at their job. They look at if they're buying a home. They want to make sure they're current on their home payments. The bankruptcy doesn't matter, because everybody in this is in bankruptcy, but they just want to make sure that the person that's getting this loan isn't going to be a high risk for default once their bankruptcy clears. But they're really not that tough. I mean, if the person has a pretty good income and they're not behind on anything else they're planning to keep, and their tax returns bear out what they earn, we get the loans. They can't really have several other bankruptcies. That usually is bad if they've had previous bankruptcy filings. It used to be if there was previous repossessions on their record, that wasn't really a strong thing, but I think they eased off on the repossessions as far as qualifying. So most of the people that I ask to go through this program get approved for it. And so,
what if the bank you're dealing with doesn't want to work with you, and they say there's no deal, we're not going to deal? Then what happens?
Well, they can just object to the value. So I mean, if they think the value is more, they can contest the value, and maybe they'll get a little bit more money, but they can't stop it altogether.
They can't stop it altogether,
because they're going to be a court order signed by the judge eventually, says this is what it's going to be. Now, it could go to a hearing. If we just can't agree, which everybody really tries to avoid, then we have to have a hearing in front of the bankruptcy judge and produce evidence of value, and it gets kind of hairy at that point. And we've actually never had to go to a hearing. We usually got it resolved, you know, at least once a hearing got set, it got resolved, because it's just not worth all the expenditure and effort.
So that's another option.
Something to keep in mind.
Another option in case you're in that situation. You have a car that you're upside down on. Well, maybe you can do something about it. And if you want to get a hold of Michael, here is the way you get a hold of him. info@iowabankruptcylaw.com, or just pick up the phone. 255-1855 is his number. Very interesting. I never knew that existed. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.